In today's AutoInstruct video, we're going to show you how to remove the rear strut from a VE or VF Commodore. And that strut contains the rear spring and shock, which you need to remove when changing your suspension setups. Let's get started. The first step when removing the rear strut from the car is to undo the sway bar end link down here on the bottom, which connects to the lower control arm. So to do that, you want to get your Torx bit and your 15mm ratchet spanner. So you're going to, sorry if I block the view of this. The spanner's going to go over the nut, like so. And then the Torx bit will go into the center of the bolt to hold it in position, like so. And then you're simply going to undo the nut. Now that the nut's loose, you can simply undo it with your finger. Take it off, and then push the sway bar out of the lower control arm and simply move it out of the way. So the next step is to undo both of these bolts. Now note the orientation of these and which bolt is which, as they are different lengths between the two, and you don't want to get them mixed up, otherwise they'll rub under here. So with this bolt, we're just going to take it off with the impact wrench first. This will allow the lower control arm to drop slightly, and then we'll take off this one and pull the strut tower out. With this one, the nut on the back side is in a very confined space. So once we remove it, when you reinsert it, we need to make sure that the nut is actually in position as we reinsert the bolt. Otherwise, you can't get the nut over the end of the bolt. For this, I'm going to be using a impact wrench, an electric one. So I won't need to hold the nut on the back side because the impact wrench operates so quickly. But if you do hold the nut on the back side, it's located just under here, and you will need an open-ended spanner. It's the only thing that will fit back there. There's a very tight gap under here where the nut is. But as I said, I'll just be using the impact. So I'll take this one off. Now that we've taken out the bolt the majority of the way, you might find it gets a bit stuck in there. So just by hand, I'm using a ratchet bit just to unscrew it out the last little bit. It's actually not now the nut holding in place anymore. It's just threads are stuck on the edges of the metal that's in there. So you can actually still unscrew it out like so. So now that bit's out. We're now going to undo this. As you can see, the hub is now loose. Now it's time to do this one and drop the lower control arm down. So same deal. I'll be using an impact socket to do it. Which is convenient. Once it's through a bit, you can do the same trick by getting a socket on the back side of it. And actually unbolt it out. As you can see, it's actually going back into the hole now. There's no nut anymore holding it. It's merely just traveling in with the steel. So we've just taken the bolt out by undoing the rest of it by hand, just to be a bit more gentle than the impact driver. And now we need to pull the strut tower out of the lower control arm. So using a skilled set of tools, aka your foot, the trick is you're going to stand on it here and push downwards to get this strut out of the lower control arm. I found this method to be the easiest. It is a bit stuck in there. Sometimes you might be able to get a tool and leverage it somehow, but I'm going to use my foot, like so. Push it out, like so. That pushes the whole entire strut out of the lower control arm. And we'll sit here on this plate, which is exactly what you want to do. And then we're going to do the 4 bolts up top, and then the strut tower will simply come out of the vehicle. So the final step is to undo the 4 bolts that hold the top of the strut tower into the chassis. So there's 2 on either side. You probably can't see them all, but they're under here. So it's a simple matter of getting a 15mm ratcheting spanner and undoing these. So I've already loosened this one off. So once you loosen them a little bit, they actually come out relatively easily. It until you're left with the last one, which is kind of stuck with all the weight. Now I'm using a 15mm ratchet spanner. For some, you can just get a socket set straight in there with an extension bar straight up from underneath. Other ones are a real pain in the ass to get to, especially the ones right up the back. So just take all these 4 off, and so I'll do this off camera, and then I'll show you the removal of the strut tower. So I've just undone the 4 bolts, so now I'm just going to pull the strut tower out. A bit of twisting and turning. Like so. So now it's out of the vehicle, and we can now reinstall the, in our case, stock suspension, but you might be going to aftermarket, but the concept's exactly the same. Now we're just reinstalling the stock strut, like so. It'll take a bit of twisting and manoeuvring to get it into position. Like so, until the top plate up here is flush with the chassis. And then you're going to get your bolts and start to do them all up. Now the trick with this is to only do them up about halfway, do all 4 of them up halfway, and then stop, because you need to get the bottom of the strut tower into the lower control arm before you tighten them all up, because you just need a bit of extra movement to complete the process. So just off camera, what we've done is gotten the strut tower into the lower control arm and gotten the bolt through. The process for this wasn't easy, and what we ended up doing was using a tool like this, getting in here and bending outwards, right, to push the strut tower inwards, and also doing that while raising it with the jack to align the bolt hole. And then once that was all lined up, we were able to push the bolt through, and now put the nut on. So what I've done now is we've put the nut on, tightened this up nice and tight, and done up the 4 bolts there on top of the strut tower. So the next step is to get this lower bolt under here in, like so. Now to do this, you need to push the lower control arm into the hub. So for this exercise, we're just using another jack. You can use another hydraulic jack if you've got one. We've just got one from a car. So what we're going to do is wind this all the way up, and we're lining it up with the hub. And as that happens, we'll insert the bolt. So we've just reinserted the second bolt down here, which you can't see on camera, which connects the lower control arm to the hub. Now that wasn't really easy to get in at all. So what we did was, again, used a jack to raise the lower control arm, and then used a couple of tools to essentially push them into the hole and twist it until we align the bolt hole, even coming from underneath. So it's a little bit difficult, but you will eventually get there in the end. So the final step is to reinstall the sway bar end link. So now, I've got a problem now, and that is that this won't reach because I've still got on the other side the aftermarket suspension setup installed. So on the other side, the lower control arm's at a different height, which is higher at the minute, which doesn't give me enough clearance to actually get there in the hole. So what I'll do now is I'll actually go and undo the other side to relieve the sway bar, and then I'll come back and do this up. So I've gone ahead and undone the other side, which allowed me to slot the sway bar end link into the hole here. Now I've got my 15mm on with my Torx piece, and we're going to tighten it up. And that's it. That is how you change the strut on your VF Commodore. It's not a very easy job, but you know, it's doable at home if you feel motivated enough to do it. Now we're just going to go for a drive, make sure everything sounds alright, and that's the job completed. Thanks for watching today's AutoInstruct video on how to remove and reinstall the rear suspension on a VE or VF Commodore. Please subscribe, and for more guides head over to autoinstruct.com.au.